Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to another session in the Livewire studio. It's Ray. We are here on a lovely Sunday afternoon amidst very warm weather and also amid COVID-19. And today we have a very, very special guest. Now, for all of you all who know me personally, I'm into cars. I've always been so. In matter of fact, as a baby, my first word was car, right? And it's also translated to the fact that I've done a little bit of racing in my time. So with me today on the show, we have a very special guest, as mentioned before. He is your 2021 Pikes Peak International Hillclimb champion, Mr. Robin Shute. Robin, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, yes, good. So Robin, seeing as you've triumphed at the mountain this year, I'm sure it was a very good feat amidst everything that was happening with COVID-19 and restrictions and whatnot, but it's good that the organizers were still able to pull off a show for all those who participated. So, as we pace and go along here, introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what do you do and a little bit of your background.
We'll do. My name is Robin, originally from the UK, from a county called Norfolk, actually quite close to Lotus Cars, if you're familiar with cars and what that is.
Very much so.
Yeah. I've been living out in the States for almost 10 years now, on or off. But I did find myself back in the UK during the pandemic, actually. I ended up sort of getting stuck there living with my parents, which was actually really enjoyable. It was hard to leave because, I was back in Norfolk in the countryside. I had my race car there, so I could work on it.
Oh, good.
I'm an engineer by trade, and I've also sort of had a bit of a racing career on the side that's turning into more and more of a career as things go on. Basically, first 23 years of my life in the UK, finished up school, went out to California States to go and work for Tesla Motors, for Elon Musk.
Excuse me, Mr. Elon Musk himself.
Exactly,
But then when he finds out one of his engineers are combustion vehicle racing on Pikes Peak, he might be like, what are you doing, Robin?
What's going on here? I see it as so the first time I ran Pikes Peak was actually in an electric car, and so I'm very much both sides of the fence with that. Yeah, because actually my day job at the moment, I work for RoboRace, also making autonomous electric race cars as well.
Yeah. I saw that road race car at Goodwood. The car actually went up the hill autonomously, right?
That's it. Yep, correct. So, it's like I just love racing. I love engineering, and I love kind of innovation. I would say that's what makes me tick is my passion.
Well, the world thrives on innovation in the last 20 years, everything about, right? Because we're around the same age. I'm 38. I think you're a little younger than I am, right?
Yeah, 33, yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're right there, don't worry, same generation. Yeah. So you're born more or less in the same 80s as the case may be. So generally speaking, if you look at how things progress in the last 20 years with anything, whether it be motorsport, aerospace, play, electronics, right? Everything has had a logarithmic shift over time in terms of what we were exposed to as kids as to what kids are exposed to now. So what exactly gave you your start in racing?
So that's a great question. I would say I first started racing actually when I was a kid with RC cars. So again, electric cars to start with. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I think that's where that passion for driving, it's a bit different with an RC car, but driving, but also working on your car, building it and tweaking and fiddling with it. So I did that for a couple of years and actually ended up racing nationally against adults, when I was very small. And then from there, my dad has always been hill climbing as well, so I go and kind of follow him along around the UK doing that. And then I sort of had a go at karts when I was like 13. I did a couple seasons in karts, not a lot. Wasn't very successful. It was very much a small effort. Like we went and did club racing locally, and then maybe one national race, and really got beat. And at that point, I sort of hung my helmet up for a couple of years, and I actually went and did more like alpine ski racing. Actually, alpine ski racing was my late teens, and that's what I did. Yeah,
you had a very fun teenage life because
I'm very lucky. Yeah.
I think it's always tandem. Anybody who's into engineering, they always somehow, it's very rare to find a mechanical engineer who does not love cars at the same time. I mean, where I work, one or two of the engineers, their shift was more or less oil and gas in terms of what they went into, right?
Yeah.
But you find some of them more like boats. You'll find some of them more like music, which is a very strange trade-off for somebody who works on machines all day long, right? Like my manager, he loves large engine-driven compressors. Like that's his thing. He can sit and talk about that for hours, right?
There you go. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Right, but tell him anything about a car, he actually drops it to fix somewhere. I'm like, dude, you can work on it yourself. Right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I mean, it's not that crazy. So the thing is, seeing as that was more or less a progression from RC cars, which are the small hobbyists, to some karting, and your father also hill climbed, right? So naturally, as a progression, if I were to assume, that is what made you choose hill climbing as a discipline?
I feel like it's the same as racing itself, right? Like I grew up with a father who's hugely passionate about cars, worked for Lotus and then did hill climbing. So I think it'd be more of an achievement to not hill climb than hill climb. But I got back into cars when I moved to the States and started doing track days and things like that. And I was doing, circuit racing for a while, enjoyed it. And it was only like Pikes Peak came to me as an opportunity. I didn't really pick it. It kind of came to me. And it was only once I got there and realized like, oh, this is really easy and I'm really good at this, that I really kind of put it all together and what it meant. So
there's the resource confidence there. Oh, I'm good at it. Yep.
It was a combination of everything I'd done before, right? Like skiing, you have to read a course and be really fast at it. That's part of the ski race stuff. You don't get much practice, and that's the same in hill climb. And also really understanding your equipment, because you get such little time to drive, to operate it. You have to have a good understanding of what's going on and be able to be really quick without practice. So that's, skills I've always had. And that's, what lent itself so well to the mountain. The other thing that I'm pretty good at is using simulators usefully, for performance. Some people drive them and it doesn't really translate to the real world, whereas I'm able to kind of get what I need from that to help me in real life driving. So it's just sort of all those weird combinations of skills that just come together. Actually, it's made me, especially because the amount of practice I have now, like incredibly competitive versus top level racing drivers. So
well, the good thing with that is that you have some analytics that you can work with. You have data that you can take from the analytics, right? And then you can match it to something real world. So that's the correlation, everything that can work in tandem. As compared to 30, 40 years ago, guys would actually take the car out to test. And then they could only scale based on the readings that they could take, tire pressures, temperature, lap time, right? How the engine performed. I mean, they had a lot more analog data to deal with back then, unlike now, the digital. And then the thing is, you can have tests and accidents if you actually carry the race car.
No, it's well, the curious thing about Pikes Peak is though that you don't have that ability to test. Really, like it's most of it is prescribed in the month of June. You can maybe reserve, if you've got a big budget, you can go and do an exclusive day or two there, which is, is expensive, which some of them big, like Volkswagen have done and Peugeot have done with their programs. But it's hard to get time on the mountain. And that's one of the big levelers between, like the smaller programs like ours and those big programs. Like it's hard to do a lot more, do extra. So you do have to go back to the simulation stuff.
Because the mountain is a public road out during the year.
Right? Exactly, yes. So they only close the mountain 2 days a year. And the first day is for Christmas Day and the second day is for race day. All the practice we do is actually before it's open to the public. So it goes from sunrise to 8:30 a.m. That's the only time we have on the mountain.
So then outside of that, so on race day itself, it opens back to the public later in the day?
No, it's not. So it's only there. I mean, it's open to the public to go and spectate, but it's not there for tourists. So you have to buy your tickets and go and watch the race. That's the end of the day. It's closed.
Hill climb is not a notable sport in the Caribbean, even though there are mountainous countries in the Caribbean, right?
It's true.
Trinidad's motorsport disciplines that you have circuit racing, you have drag racing, you have autocross, which I do. We have rallying, but it's kind of dried up over the years, right? Due to, sometimes you could say budget affordability of certain things, mass appeal, right? What was big pre-COVID was there used to be a kind of rally carnival throughout the Caribbean, You would have Rally Trinidad, Rally Barbados, there would be Rally Ghana, right? There would be Rally Jamaica, right? In different cases, right? So the thing is, generally speaking, you would have a lot of people visiting different islands at that point in time in the year when rallying would have been big. But then each island that has motorsport has their own little rally championship, right? But I've not heard a lot of news of it in a long while. But now with COVID, I mean, everything, at least on my side, is closed. I mean, I can't speak for the other islands. I think some of them, I think Barbados may have racing going on right now. I think Jamaica does as well, but I'm not too sure at this point in time. But given the fact that Pikes Peak is a monumentous place, I mean, I guess the real challenge or, the rise for the competitors to get to is to make the most of the time that they do have on the mountain when they go.
Yeah, that's it. That's completely it. And it's a skill in itself. I think that comes back down to the mindset and philosophy of how you do the program. I find it fascinating watching Elon and his rockets right now, Starship, right? Yeah. And you go and see how he's constantly questioning how and why they go and build the rockets. It's just like a step or two back. And I always think like there's similarities with our program with really trying not to do too much and then try and just focus on the important stuff. And that's part of the maximizing this tiny amount of time. And I'm sure it's the same with you guys in the Caribbean, like with not much motorsport going on, and especially now you've got this long period of time to maybe tune up your cars or go and find yourself an advantage without testing. Like, how you go and do that?
In my case, I have an Escort that's sitting on in my workshop for the last 6 years. And now I have all the time in the world to actually work on it.
Yeah, there you go. You go.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do. I mean, that's what I did last year. I didn't go racing and I sat in my dad's garage and made a mess.
No, we won't call it a mess. It's called a hobby and it's called a pastime and it's fun. Our mothers might refer to it as a mess if they don't like it, because trust me, I got enough beans to bring this car home the first time. I was like, Mom, and the irony, my mom had an Escort, when her first car was a Ford Escort Mark II. My car's a Mark II as well, same white as hers. And the thing is, I was like, I think I'm gonna buy an Escort. And she turns and watch me, why you want a 40-something-year-old car to bring home? I'm like, Mom, race car. She's like, no, right?
No.
Spending money on something else. I'm like, well, when the car came, the first thing she said, you have to get that car driver there. You have to get that car built. 6 years later,
Still good.
But it will be done. It will be done soon.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate those. My cousin is really into the Mark II Escorts. He actually had a pretty quick one out in the UK. I think he still does, with a Vauxhall
GRE engine.
The red tops in that.
A CX20E.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and I think it's like 300 horsepower or so in that thing. So yeah. 2 litre, 300 horsepower, pokey. He drives it very sideways everywhere. Hill climbs it. He goes and hill climbs it, and gets everyone's attention when he goes up the mountain. So I guess it's a family
affair,
a family pastime is hill climb, actually, without deliberately doing it. You just can't avoid it, can you?
Yeah, well, once it's in the blood, it happens. I mean, I've had friends whose fathers were into music and they formed bands as they were teenagers, and then their sons did it, right? Yeah. So then it's all part and parcel of what you grew into, right? I mean, my grandfather was a machinist on one side, mechanic on the other side. So naturally, it went to one of their sons and then to me eventually, right? Yeah. So it's all kind of ingrained in you, you could say. You follow? Yep. Unless you pick up something totally different as you grow up. It's all the conditioning that you got as you grew up. So the type of car did you race at Pikes Peak? What type of model is it, and what made you select it?
So it's a sports prototype from like a high level. What kind of car is it? It was originally created to run in the FIA CN2 category, which is essentially for the CN category has a couple of different engine sizes, but CN2, I believe, is the 2 litre Honda K series, 4-cylinder. And naturally aspirated. These were like spec engines with around 250 horsepower. The cars were about weight limits around 540, 550 kilo plus driver, with pretty good aerodynamics, efficient aerodynamics on it, 13-inch wheels. So that was the base of the car, and that kind of class sort of died a death maybe 3 to 5 years ago. It sort of went out of popularity as LMP3 came in Europe. Romain Dumas had been running his Norma up on Pikes Peak for a few years previous, and that's the same car built to those same rules. And now in Europe, they sort of run these CN cars like more of a racy spec. So they go up to 3-litre NA V8s, so Judd V8s, and those they sound absolutely spectacular.
I've heard a few of those in some Hillclimb cars, especially Georg Plazas.
The BMW.
BMW. That car is a monster. I mean, it's a thing for me to tick off in terms of travel is whenever things open up is to go to St. Agatha, right, in Switzerland, where they have Hillclimb. I mean, I'm astounded the speeds that they attain on those mountain roads. I'm like, we have roads similar in terms of layout in the north of this country. The finish of the road is not as good, but in terms of if you want a nice mountain pass where you can drive, and I mean, only if the government was a bit more, how shall I say, in tune with the motorsport crowd to say that, okay, we lock off a road and you have your safety and you have everything and you can go and run an event. I mean, that would be spectacular, but I don't live in Europe. I live in Caribbean. So, straight off, winter, hot climate, something works.
Exactly. Definitely. No, there's not much of a hill climb scene out in California, really. There's some up in the Pacific Northwest, but that's just a long tow for us to even go and consider to do. And the roads are pretty torn up. But I think you have this, it's the same with Pikes Peak, right? That started out as, as part of a rally. It's like a stage in a rally. So when you have that combination of rally stage / hill climb, you can eventually bring it to a more produced event in the hill climb. We're looking at cool places up in the mountains where you could maybe put a hill climb in California. Now it's all hypothetical. Would we do that? But it's fun to think where can you go race? I find that exciting as well. Purpose-built road courses are brilliant. But also I think it's exciting to drive on real roads with cars that have to be able to deal with imperfections in the pavement and things like that.
Of course.
Because in Europe, the roads are really nice, laid probably better than some nice racetracks here on the west coast over there. That's why they can go so fast. These cars are this high off the ground. You can hear them just scraping, and you can't do that on Pikes Peak. That's not something a luxury you can have.
There's someone who races a normal prototype with a Judd V10. Right, and I'm trying to remember who is the racer. And I remember the sound clip that I heard of that car. They was they had a speed camera set up and at one vantage, and then you just see the car pass and that air splitting sound of that V10. I saw the sound clip, and this girl who I was talking to, she's like, why are you shaking so much? Girl, hear this, right?
Come here, listen to this.
She's like, what the hell is that? It's like, that's a V10 engine. I mean, then she's like, oh, you on these cars again. That's guys, that's us.
That's amazing engine, those. I'd love to do. I love turbo stuff. I love NA high revving things. It's all good in my book, and I love to think of how can you get a screaming V10 on the mountain? And again, you like the Quattro, right, which is the 5-cylinder, which is a very similar sound. I kind of prefer 5 cylinders. It's it's a bit of a fruitier 10. But how can you have a car with that noise, that kind of Quattro legendary noise, just racing up the mountain quickly?
But then again, the mountain doesn't lend well to any vehicles because of air density as you go up.
Exactly. Right? So how do you go and do that? And I think there are a couple different ways, because you've got the simplicity of it, which is the lightweight. It's also a lot easier to, tuning a turbo car for the mountain is a nightmare, because you've got so many moving variables. Targets, variables to go and dial in. It takes a long time to set it up. Every time we run the car, we're adjusting the tune in some shape or form, right? With an NA car, it's a lot easier. So this is only you're changing your VE, and it'll be your volumetric efficiency per altitude, just because the back pressure changes a bit. But it's pretty straightforward to go and do. So you can focus on driving, get everything else dialed. So So you just need a really powerful NA motor. And then accept that you're going to lose a bit of
the power as you go down,
but it's still enough. So I think is it the Cosworth TJ motors, the Formula 1 V10s from the 2000s? They're probably good for 800-900 horsepower, and they don't weigh much. So there'll be 500 or 600 on the mountain, and a sub 100 kilo engine that would still
do pretty well.
Do very well, and you could build a 400 kilo car, I think, with one of those. If you did it right, and at that power to weight at that point, you'd be laughing.
Cosworth, if you're listening to this, supply this man one of those engines for his prototype the next year.
I'd love that, yeah.
Side note, I am a Ford guy, right? So
nice.
Oh yeah. So when you compare, so it's an unlimited category, we came first in, right?
Yep.
And then
category, yep.
And first overall as well.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And
yeah,
in 2019 was the same category?
Same category, yeah, and overall. I just realized the other day, like the 19 spec car, I could have run an open wheel and set a record. I just entered it unlimited. Maybe dumb, I don't know. I don't normally think too hard about the classes. This is more about like, no rules.
Let's
try to
try
go as fast as we can. Yeah, mountain. Like, let's just get crazy. So that's the spirit of our program.
Yeah. So I saw. So basically, you had Paul Dallenbach scratching his head a little bit then.
The crash. You mean the one with the stuck throttle? Is that
yeah. Well, he didn't race after that. He didn't race this year.
He did race this year. Yeah, he's back and running, and he might have been able to set a new class record again this year.
Okay.
I mean, they're kind of inching away at it. He had a good. I mean, him and Clint had a great run last year in 2020 when they still ran the race. So yeah, he's been slowly chipping away at that car. He's got like a pretty nice IndyCar motor in that now as well. So he's steadily progressing that. I mean, with that platform, like you could, the thing I always like is like, it's the steady progression and development of the car, and he's getting to a place. I think there is opportunity within that class to like take a huge step forward for the record. And you had, I forget the guy's name. There was a Formula Atlantic entered this year, and unfortunately we were there when he blew the motor in testing.
Oh my.
And that car was fast. I mean, he was his rookie year there, so there'd be a steep learning curve with that car, but that car would have, I think, been good for going under 9 if that worked. Yeah. So like, again, a hot rodded Formula Atlantic would be really quick up there.
But Formula Atlantic with what type of engine?
That's just a turboed, I think it was a 1.6 litre Toyota. Like
4AG.
Yeah, that one. So like, obviously that car was done really nicely as well, that install. But yeah, like it doesn't take much, and that's I think the thing with open wheel is you've got the more traditional cars that are originally conceived for the gravel, and then and actually not, because sometimes even in the gravel years they ran actually Indy cars, right, and Indy Lights cars.
Yeah, correct.
But they still sort of have that legacy from the gravel and how it competes. And I think there is a big, I mean, like I said, Wolf in 19, and we could make the car as it sits now in 2021, just cut away a couple of fenders, and then we're back to open wheel. And I think we could set the hill record like that. But even if we didn't, you could move the 9.5 minutes to easily 8.5 with a bad run. So there is the open wheel rules are really not that restrictive in the whole scheme of things. They have like some power to weight stuff, but with a 2-litre turbo, you wouldn't really worry about it. I don't think you'd get anywhere near it. They're pretty liberal rules.
Well, so. I guess for the Honda guys who I know, they would be snapping at the heels to wonder what was the tuning involved in that K20 that your car had.
But
I know Mountain, and they are pretty good at what they do, right?
Yes,
I mean, I follow them on Instagram, and I know Dave Mountain, I think his name is, the owner. Yeah, I mean, he was big into minis and Fords in the 70s. So, I mean, I have some of the books from Visa that has some of his contributions in it. And I mean, these guys, I mean, they know their stuff.
Yeah, right? Definitely. So that's Mountain in the UK, and then Mountain USA is a bit of a spin-off with Ken behind it. And so he was very close with David, but they do things a little differently there. And actually, Mountain USA is a lot of ex-IndyCar people when they're doing the Cosworth IndyCar motors. So that's who they have there. So a whole wealth of experience. Like, you could give them any motor and they'll do such a good job with it. So yeah, it's a little different experience, but yeah, a lot of that core competency came when Cosworth were doing, I think, the V8s in the 90s for IndyCar. So they were, so even in 19, they were kind of working with the engine program. They were doing, like, it was HPD were building the motors, and then Mountain were then doing all the dyno work with us. And the spec of motor that we're running, and actually the block, in the end we didn't run that block this year because we had some issues with it. But that block we won with 19 had won the race previously another 3 times with Dumas. So that engine program came from Dumas through to us. So again, we've kind of been working with them, developing that and getting that in a good spot. So this last year, I think we're just about on the sweet spot of, obviously like the cam timings sort of dialed in, springs, valves, all that kind of basic stuff's there.
Head button.
The head is a 4-piston head. It's a pretty, like, if you didn't put a turbo on that motor, that would still make really good power. That's probably so 2.1 litre. That would probably still be making 300 horsepower NA as it's sat. So very efficient motor. And then
not bad.
Add to that. And I basically designed an Inconel header turbo system with it. And Borg Warner did a really well matched turbo now for altitude. Like the turbo wouldn't be great down, like the turbo we had in 19 would be great for that setup at sea level. It was just too big for the mountain. And then they did us a slightly smaller turbine housing for this year and a slightly different
compressor housing.
Yeah,
so at least you'll get good spool characteristics low down.
Yeah, exactly. So that combined with like the primaries properly sized on the headers, we had the slightly smaller turbine, and then we went to E85 fuel. So it was, we were using VPQ16, which is gasoline based, leaded, oxygenated, pretty racy fuel, but it comes with some headaches, which is okay typically for drag racing, but for actually when you're running for continuous periods of time, it's actually causes some headaches for you. So we went over to the X85 E85. It's like a race E85, and that just was so much easier to use. Some advantages with cooling, made more power, actually made a lot more power as well. So that was a revelation there, really. We ended up making more. We were expected to make less power this year and ended up making more because of the fuel change and how we done like turbo air filter and things like that. So
I think once you make the most per cycle, right, in terms of the actual energy that you can get extracted from the fuel, you should be able to make the output that you want, right? I mean, we don't have that challenges because we live at sea level, so everything else is just tuned. I mean, I'm literally watching the ocean from outside my window here right now, right? I mean, there are some guys. I mean, the rules that we have allowed here at the circuit racing is commercially available gasoline that you can buy, right? I mean, so any of the VP fuels are allowed. I don't think E85 is allowed per se, but I think some people use it depending on if it's just testing or whatnot, tuning to see what they can make out of the engines, as the case may be. So based on your experience of the mountain, if you compare the first championship to this one, which one had more alerted, or which one stuck more with you in terms of the experience?
That's great. I mean, like every year was so different. So this was my... Hang on, was it my fourth? No, it's 17, 18, 19. That was my 4th year this year. So what really stuck with me about this year was like so much went right, because we were in a big pickle in the muddle like the week before the race because of COVID stuff. Shipping the car from the UK to the States just took three times as long, and like the car still needed some stuff finishing on it, and I hadn't driven it in 2 years, and it turned up the Wednesday before race week after no testing. All these things are like terrible. I would never plan this into a program, but it was what it was, and we were lucky in that we could just kind of lean in on our experience and actually good engineering. There's a lot of new bits on the car this year that just worked, which never happens. So I think from that side of things, we were very lucky. Also, the team hadn't really seen or worked on the car for a bit, so we're all starting from afresh without any practice. Same with me in driving. I hadn't driven a quick race car in 2 years or been on the mountain. So the fact that all came together and the car was such a big step up from 19 was astonishing in my book. And also the performance upgrades we put on the car, I was kind of expecting to be as fast as we were, but with that, like us getting everything out of the whole car. Whereas what we ended up doing was being that fast with a setup we just kind of threw on the car and run the weekend, run the week. And there was a lot more to come in, even the setup of the car at that point. So to go and find that performance without any practice or any fine tuning was really cool and really promising for the program moving forward. I think that we our aim with the program is to go under 757. That's a huge goal.
Ambitious.
Ambitious. And actually, like 19, I was pretty disappointed because I thought we got everything we could out of the car, and that was looking like, if all our stars aligned, like at just over 8 minute 30, we could have done. And that was it. Everything was pretty maxed out.
I guess for not driving the car for a while, just like reflex action, second nature kicked in.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. Yeah, all your spinal cords is there, and remembering stuff. And did a little bit of simulator stuff, and I was working a little bit for the Lotus Driving Academy, which was enough to like sort of not completely lose it. But yeah, I'm pretty good at just getting in the car and being fast. It's sort of instinctive, so I'm lucky. I'm lucky there. But
based on the video that I saw, I mean, that car didn't miss a beat at all throughout the tour run.
It did. There's a few places there actually. So one of the things and we still need to go and run the car again and probably fault diagnose it, but we had like 2 big issues that day. First one was we forgot to turn the oxygen on for me, and that's which sounds basic, but
how do you
yeah, it's a weird thing for like motorsports, like we forgot to give the
turn
driver,
your air.
Turn your air on, but we plumb oxygen in there, and the car's so physical to drive. You can be as fit as you like. You're going to struggle with that. There's no power steering on it or anything, or power brakes. The belts are so tight to hold you in, you can't open and close your lungs properly. And the first bit that runs incredibly physical. So with that, I kind of knew that like, I'm losing my breath.
Yeah.
Like things are tricky, so you have to just take a step back when you're driving. And just be aware of your abilities and drive to them. So I definitely kind of just took a little off there. It was still a pretty good run. And again, like I hadn't run the bottom section in the dry in 2 years until race day. So again, it was like a rally stage. Like I just had to figure out how fast I thought the car would go through the turns and hope for the best. It was that.
Indeed.
That sort of, which it was all right. So that was the big one, like the oxygen there. And the other problem we had was we did a whole new, essentially, oiling system, and I think we were getting a little bit of how we plumbed the oil into the block. With the pressure, it was bleeding back off the original oil inlet, and so we weren't quite making
oil pressure the way you want.
Yeah, and it was good when the oil was cold, and as the car heated up, the pressure dropped and dropped and dropped. And by the time on race day and up to like the last minute or two, we started to get to that point where we were not having enough oil pressure to keep VTEC kicked in. So you'll see a couple of like power cuts on that last
section going up
there. Yeah, so I'm like on the straight, and then my head lurches forward. You go from like 1.1 G of acceleration to nothing, and then it kicks back in. So that happened in a few places. That lost us a couple seconds there. Like between my driving being backed off and those problems, there's easy, and like the lack of practice, there's easy like 10 seconds there just by itself.
Well,
which would have put us faster than low, but at least up to that point. So that's pretty good.
That is good, because I think Loeb did like his time was like 8 minutes something, yes? Right?
8:13, yeah.
In 13 in the end. And I mean that 2 is a 208 that it built, right?
Yeah.
That V6 engine. I mean, that was a crazy car in itself when it went up Pikes Peak. And I mean, at that point in time, Loeb was on form with anything that he drove. Right?
Oh, he still is. He is ridiculous. He could just turn up to WRC and win a race without. Yeah. And like most people spend decades getting good enough to maybe win a WRC, right? Like that, he's bonkers.
I think most of us would love to just roll up into a WRC and at least just drive a stage and say, I did this.
Exactly, right? You look at Kimi Räikkönen, right? That's kind of what he did, and struggled and crashed a lot. Ken Block the same.
Well, you see, Kimi just has no feeling. He's just like, I am here at the rally stage. Hello. He's like almost Russian, although he's Finnish, He's just like very straight face. I come, I drive, I enjoy, I leave. right?
Yeah. I appreciate that. I love Gibby.
Of course. I mean, he's a riot. I mean, all the antics that he has throughout his career, it's thoroughly enjoyed. So as we carry along, is there any other motorsport discipline, if it is you could have tried it, or did it at this same level you'd have done?
I mean, I'd do it all. So I'm gonna be honest. It's just a matter of money, really. That's it. So, I'm sort of maybe a bit more old school in like, you look at the drivers, people like Jim Clark back in the day would just be racing everything everywhere, and that's sort of what but where I'm at, what I'd love. I do love the light, high downforce cars. That is definitely something I get a kick out of. But it's also cool to drive GT cars. That's been fun. I'd love to try my hand at rallying and rallycross. I think that would be cool. NASCAR's cool. I like oval racing. I think's neat because
if I were to try NASCAR, it would be mostly the road courses. I mean, ovals, they're cool, but I prefer the road course setup. I mean, that's what I'm accustomed to,
Sure, exactly. And a part of it is being accustomed to it. But having done like cycle the velodrome and race on a velodrome, you realize all the tactics and all what comes about in that race is actually more of a thinker's race than a driver's race, which has cool aspects to it. Like the Indy 500. I'd love to do that. So
that's strategy.
Yeah, it's all this stuff is. I think it's the variety and the uniqueness of it that's cool. V8 Supercars, another amazing series, and the endurance stuff in LMP, Le Mans.
Man, if drivers these days had your level of enthusiasm while racing, would have been so much different. Because if you look at it, right, a lot of people stay in one discipline for more or less their whole career. Yeah,
they do, and I think part of it is down to people are so good in everything, right? They're there practicing, testing, and doing it a lot, so it's hard to go and beat. For me to slot into, I've done this a couple of times, slot into a series, and it's like I'm doing the best out of anyone with the same practice as me, but I've had no practice, so I'm not going to be winning at that point. It takes time to go and develop and get on the top spot. So you have to pick your battles there.
No, but I mean, when you have the diversity, like back in the day, when you had Clark racing, Lotus Cortinas on a Sunday, F2s, then it's Formula One car, doing some rallying with that same Lotus Cortina Mark 1. Probably, anything else that he could have gotten his hand on to, right? At that point in time. I mean, sports racing cars as well, because I think he ran Le Mans at some point in time as well, right?
So, right?
So, I mean, you don't see a lot of these guys, especially in Formula One, you don't see them doing any multi-discipline until they leave Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Bottas is doing a bit of rallying at least, and that's good. And again, part of it, because there's so much money riding on all this, right? They're contractually not allowed to do anything else, which sucks. I mean, you had Alonso do the 500, which was really cool. You're seeing a few people branch out, but again, the schedules are so busy and the level of perfection is so high that it's hard to do. And I hope, so I sort of see, you had a really key point at the start here where you said the amount of progress that's happened in motorsport has just been exponential over the last couple of years, and part of that has been down to just people focusing on one bit or another. And I think actually we're in a bad place for motorsport because everything is so well figured out, so well refined.
Where can you go now?
Yeah, it's you sort of optimized on these places, and that they are where they are, and it's just a battle of resource now rather than of kind of sport so much. So I hope, and you're starting to see this. I think Formula One is actually recognizing this a little bit, and it's changing the rule set of how people compete under. Where it's you're pulling down the resource a bit, and you're focusing the competition on areas away from maybe just aerodynamics or something like that. I mean, it's still there, but they're nudging it in the right direction. And I think, there's something to be said back in the day when, teams of 10, 20 people were making cars and going racing. And that's just hard in itself to go and physically design, make, build and race a car with that fewer people. Is a sport in itself,
correct.
And to go and do better than that, even modern technology, you would be seconds off what you have now with these huge teams and organizations and businesses. So I think it's tough to go and fundamentally change the way motorsport does business. But I think, I see that as maybe a healthy way to go to keep the sport a sport and less of a business. And maybe electric can help with that. Probably at the moment it's going the other direction, but I hope the battle between electric and internal combustion will
rage on for a little while.
Yeah, I think it will. I hope it will be able to. People will go and pick the one they prefer to go and race in, and they're easier to go and do. I think, having spent a lot of time looking at doing electric race cars and like for the masses, if we were to go to electric, what does that mean for the world? Is that good for the planet? And based on where technology is now, like if you were to make electric race cars, it's worse for the planet than to stick with what you got. Now, there's an argument around marketing, getting more people driving EVs. Well, that's where you're really helping. But I think that's a good way along now. But for motorsport at a club level, you actually want to stick with people. Recycling old cars and recycling old engines is by far the best way to go. And then just filling with biofuel or synthetic fuel. That's about as good as you can get, and sort of reduce travel.
You have over 100 years development in one technology field, combustion engines, right?
Yeah.
Which you can build and expand on because the science and the skill set is already there. My concern that exists is that you're going to put so much of people, so much of processes, suppliers, if the major shift, whenever it happens, out of work, and then you have to more or less change them over time, transition them to the new technology. Right? That what do I do? What do all these customer companies, manufacturers who been making engines and parts and spares and whatnot, gearboxes, where do they go after this? Because basically that market will basically go to the vintage racing market, right? To maintain the old stuff, right? Because people who race 60s touring cars or 60s GT cars, they still need spares, right? And classic cars still exist in racing worldwide, right? I lean more or less to vintage stuff because I've been watching Goodwood racing for the longest while, and I always look forward to seeing my Lotus Cortina battles with all these other bigger cars. And it's there. It's basically there for me in terms of if I were to try something, vintage racing all the way, because I'm a fan of older technology. I like the new stuff, but I grew up on the old stuff. Because where we are here in the Caribbean, we've fuel injected cars when they started to come in mass in the Caribbean, and digital ones in the mid-90s, right? They some of them were around in the 80s, but not very much. And then it basically became the mainstream when all the firms began to sell them, right? So most of my boyhood experiences have been carbureted cars, right? So from a Mini to the Escort I have parked up there, easy stuff that, once you have the enthusiasm, you know how to knack, you can work on them. Brothers BMW, however, you need to get the module to connect, to communicate to the car, to reset anything if you even take off one or two sensors, right? So unless you have specialist tools where the actual thing is leading now to, you're basically going to need like probably $100,000 in equipment just to work on your car.
I think that's so I'm like two sides of the pond on that one again as well, because you look at, we use an ECU in the Wolf, and we're able to do so much with that and save so much money in other areas. And think about really dialing in a carburetor and everything that comes around that. If you have the easy ability to access, electric fuel injection, it's actually like takes a bit of time to, it takes a little while to get your head around it, but it's not too bad. But you've got so much power and control over it, you can do so many more things with it. So I think it's both good and bad. Like there's upsides, downsides, and if you, rather than being afraid of the tech, kind of go with the tech, and you'll see, like, I think most EFI stuff now, you have pretty good access to what you can do with it.
I embrace the tech, it's not a problem for me, because I'm a trained mechanic as well, right? So the thing is, it's commonplace, but at the same time, it's like more a matter of what you like rather than what exists. So like most of my friends who autocross with me, all their cars are fuel injected. Some of them are turbocharged. The car I'm building would be a carbureted car at the end of the day, and some of them have never even seen what a side draft looks like. I had two of them out on the deck at the end. It's like, what's that? I'm like, this, and I pointed to their laptop and their injectors. This is this, right? Just not that way. Oh definitely. My. I think what we should do, because I have other series lined up with this, I guess what we can do, Robin, from time to time I can do a little check-in video with you over the air, and we can talk about different topics. Since you're an engineer, it's always good to get somebody's feedback on certain things, when it comes to either design application, because as you said before, the field evolves, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess in the case of racing, it is more enthusiasm driven that eventually leads to some of the innovation coming on the pipeline. Because if somebody didn't think about it at first and then they put it behind it, it wouldn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Oh yes, Robin, this has been a treat, honestly speaking, on a Sunday afternoon. I think there's no better way unless we were at Pikes Peak itself. But before we wrap and before we make any special mentions, for yourself in particular, what is the allure of the mountain?
I think it's, for me at least, it's the ultimate challenge, and that comes from like, as an individual, as an engineer, as a driver, and it's just like being there is nice. If you were to do nothing, you were just there just to hang out and just be there. Like it's a really nice place to be. You're at sunrise on the top of a 14,000 foot mountain for a week. Wow. But it's pretty rare you get to do that, right? And the public can't do that in itself. So that's the allure. It's like a very like the challenge of it is very fundamental. Like it's, you go to, say again, Formula One is like, oh, you have this rule book, hundreds of pages thick of all these things, and I've got to be smart and get around the rules and this kind of, right? Whereas there, it's just like you turn up and you're like, go up here as quickly as you can, don't die.
Yes, correct.
It's quite a nice, I kind of like that. It's not overthought. The constraints around the competition are mainly natural, right? Like, and I think that's a layer. And it's not just me, it's the whole team, right? I have a team of 10, 12 volunteers who come along with this and come along each year and, pay their way to be there. So that allure is there for everyone. It's just that kind of fundamental
feeling,
ultimate challenge to go and, kind of compare yourself. And it's hard as well. Like, it's the other thing is like just being up there, waking up early every day and not getting sleep and dealing with, the altitude. It's tough. And that's part of the allure, part of the challenge.
Oh, thank God. In my case, I've been genetically adapted to have very big lungs. So
there you go.
Go up the hill.
I
mean, my uncle has a Triumph TR7 in Texas. So a kind of dream of mine would have been, hey, uncle, let's build the car. Let's see what it takes to carry it to Pikes Peak. Just as a between amongst the boys kind of thing,
Yeah, definitely. You can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that. It's part of the allure. And I think everyone goes there with their own challenge, their own goals. That it's rare for people to go to a race without trying to win it. And I think Pikes Peak is probably one of those places where people go there just to compete, and it's their own challenges and their own personal victories that they're after, rather than the top of the timesheets.
Man, I think we have to do some wrapping on this, because eventually when the world opens up for travel easier, I think I need to come to Pikes Peak. I think me and the team need to come to Pikes Peak, right?
Yeah.
Take part in this. So before we proceed with the other mention, if you had any tips to give anyone to get started in this, what would they be?
So I think, it like sort of depends what level you are on your program, but I think like first of all, just having a really good understanding of your equipment and like having a good level of competence with it so that you're comfortable with it, and then you can go to this next stage of going and competing on the mountain. You have this rule set that's pretty easy to understand, and it's a lot of the level of prep there is around safety, and then the other thing is dealing with the altitude. But so basically it's just like read up on the challenge. Any drivers going there for the first time, there's no excuse for not knowing where the mountain goes. There's enough resource and simulations out there where you can be really well prepared before getting there. You shouldn't be getting lost on the mountain. Like you can do that in good preparation. And then just enjoy the ride. It's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to be rolling with the punches, because it's all about, like, the hardest thing there is just turning up and getting on the mountain. That's like step one, and it's a big step one. You'd be amazed at how many curveballs the world throws at you. So
not being in VTEC,
exactly, right.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just enjoy the rides and get to the top.
Well, there indeed. So is there anyone you'd like to give a special mention or shout out to?
Yeah, sure. Just a big shout out to the Sendy Club. It's a group of friends, who are the team who work together to make this program a possibility. Also, our partners, which is Mountune USA. We've got Pirelli USA. We have PWR USA. We have VP Racing, Motul, Black Art Customs, Motorsports Electronics, and Borg Warner Performance, just to name but a few. So without their help and support, this program wouldn't be possible. And it is about all their individual enthusiasms for the program that really goes the extra mile. Everyone has the same shared passion and goals as us, and it's the extra mile and just wanting to succeed is what makes it count, as well as the quality product. So yeah, big thank you to all of them, and thank you to you for chatting. It's been a fun hour.
Indeed. I mean that's how gearheads do on a Sunday. And also
exactly, yeah.
For our viewers who may want to find you, where can they find you on social media?
So you can find me at Robin Shute Racing on Instagram, and then also the Sendy Club on Instagram. Also, that's kind of our two main channel outlets. Also go to YouTube to Superfast Matt's YouTube channel, and he's done a great video on our program this year. It's about 25 minutes long. It's a fun watch. And then we'll be doing a few other things with him as well to sort of share our journey to the sub 757 goal that we have. So some more content will be coming there as well. So go and check all that out.
Oh, trust me, we'll be sending good vibes on our end to ensure that you get to that goal as well.
Yeah, hope so. Might not be next year, can't say, but we'll just keep doing our best.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Oh yes. Well, Robin, this has indeed been a treat. I've enjoyed every moment of this, and we shall do more of these in time to come, right?
Yeah.
So for me and the team, everyone at Livewire and everybody at Book Your Film, all right, thank you, Mr. Robin Shute, for being with us and spend a little time on a Sunday afternoon.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ray. Wish you all the best. Speak to you soon.
Okay, man. Take care. And folks, be safe. We know it's COVID time. It's a very strange time in the world right now, but I believe we'll all be well. And besides, we have to go and cheer Robin on the hill, right?
Exactly.
So,
appreciate it.
Take care, and bye.